These are some of the darkest and most disturbing documentaries ever made in history. I put together this iceberg, and the deeper we go, the more disturbing and obscure the content gets. Let's start at the tip of the iceberg. Tier 1. At the center of the documentary is Nick Yaris, an American man who spent 22 years on death row for a crime he did not commit. Yaris' story begins in a childhood that he has described as unstable and damaging. By his teenage years, he had fallen into addiction and into a pattern of petty crime. In December of 1981, Yaris was 20 years old. One night, he and a friend stole a car. He was driving under the influence when police stopped him in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. Yaris and the officer got into a physical confrontation. During the struggle, the officer's gun discharged. No one was killed, but the situation immediately escalated. Yaris was charged with the kidnapping and attempted murder of a police officer, charges that carried the possibility of life in prison. He was jailed to await trial. Eventually, he would be tried and acquitted of those charges. But by then, something irreversible had already happened. While sitting in jail, facing the possibility that his life was over, Yaris came across a newspaper article. It detailed the abduction and murder of a young woman named Linda Craig. She had been taken from a shopping center in Delaware and her body later found in Pennsylvania. The case was unsolved. Her true murderer remains unknown to this day. Desperate and trying to save himself, Yaris made a decision that would destroy his life. He told authorities that he knew who had committed the crime. He named a man he believed was recently deceased, assuming the claim could not be challenged. It was a calculated move to gain favor with investigators, to appear useful, and to avoid the consequences of his own charges. But the man Yaris named was very much alive. Police investigated and quickly determined he had nothing to do with the murder. At that moment, Yaris stopped being a source and became a suspect. Almost overnight, he went from a frightened young man trying to bargain his way out of prison to the number one suspect in a brutal murder. Yaris was charged with the abduction, rape, and murder of Linda Craig. There was no physical evidence tying him to the crime scene. What there was instead was a narrative that prosecutors were eager to solidify. After a short jury trial, Yaris was found guilty. At just 21 years old, Nick Yaris was sentenced to death. After his sentencing, while being transported to a post-sentence hearing, Yaris briefly escaped custody but was quickly recaptured and returned to death row. Appeals followed. Each one failed. The courts reaffirmed his guilt again and again. Yaris deteriorated. He spent time in solitary confinement. He described the slow erosion of identity that comes with being locked in a cell for 23 hours a day, knowing the state intends to kill you. But something else happened during those years. Yaris taught himself to read. He educated himself using whatever materials he could access. He married a prison volunteer visitor, forming a relationship that existed almost entirely through glass and supervision. And most significantly, he became the first death row prisoner to seek DNA testing to prove his innocence. Early testing efforts were inconclusive. Evidence had been mishandled or simply ignored. Some physical evidence had not even been disclosed to the defense. Still, Yaris wrote letters and waited. More than 20 years after his conviction, a third round of DNA testing was finally ordered. This time, it included previously undisclosed physical evidence. The results were definitive. The DNA did not belong to Nick Yaris. Instead, it pointed to two unidentified men whose identities remain unknown. In 2004, after resolving the remaining charges related to his escape, Nick Yaris was released from prison. He walked out a free man at 42 years old. Nearly half his life had been spent on death row for a crime he did not commit. The Jinx is a true crime documentary about Robert Durst, a New York real estate heir, convicted murderer, and longtime suspect in multiple deaths spanning nearly 4 decades. For most of his life, Durst existed in a strange legal limbo, constantly surrounded by suspicion and circumstantial evidence, yet never quite pinned down. Until the documentary, The Jinx investigates 3 major cases connected to Durst. The first is the unsolved 1982 disappearance of his wife, Kathleen McCormick, known as Kathy. The second is the 2000 execution-style killing of his longtime friend, Susan Berman. The third is the 2001 killing and dismemberment of his neighbor, Morris Black. Durst confessed to killing Black. He claimed it was self-defense, and in 2003, he was acquitted. Kathy McCormack, however, was never found. She vanished in January 1982. At the time, Durst told police he dropped her off at a train station in New York. She was never seen again. Friends said she was afraid of him. Medical school classmates said she planned to leave him. Durst later claimed she had simply run off. Susan Berman was different. She was a writer and the daughter of a Las Vegas mob figure. She had known Durst for decades and acted as his spokesperson during the investigation into Kathy's disappearance. In December 2000, Berman was found dead in her Beverly Hills home. She had been shot once in the back of the head. It was an execution-style killing. On the same day Berman's body was discovered, police received an anonymous letter with only 2 words written on it: cadaver, Beverly Hills. The letter led them directly to her house. At the time, no one knew who sent it. Then there was Morris Black. In 2001, Durst was living in Galveston, Texas, disguised as a mute woman named Dorothy Sinner. Morris Black was his neighbor. According to Durst, the two argued and Black attacked him. Durst shot him in self-defense. Then he dismembered Black's body, put the parts in trash bags, and dumped them into Galveston Bay. He was arrested. He admitted everything and was found not guilty. The jury accepted his self-defense claim. Slowly, across the episodes, Durst's stories begin to fracture. The turning point of the entire series comes at the end of episode 5. That's when Sareb Kaufman, Susan Berman's stepson, contacts the filmmakers. He tells them he has material that Berman left behind before her death. Among it is an envelope that Durst sent her in March 1999. The filmmakers notice something immediately: the handwriting. The envelope Durst sent Berman is written in block letters, and it contains a spelling mistake. Beverly Hills is spelled wrong. The anonymous envelope sent to police in December 2000, the one that led them to Berman's body, is also written in block letters, with the exact same misspelling. The filmmakers place both envelopes side by side and they match. Realizing the significance of what they're holding, the team puts both envelopes in a safety deposit box. The director tries to get Durst for a second interview. Durst suddenly becomes evasive. He says he's in Spain, but earlier he told someone else he was in Los Angeles. Durst stops returning calls and loses interest in the project. The director convinces Durst to sit down for one more interview. During the interview, they confront him with the handwriting evidence, showing him the 2 envelopes. Durst looks at them. He acknowledges the similarity, but he denies writing the letter and the interview ends.
Well, I mean, the writing looks similar and the spelling is the same, so I can see the conclusion the cops would draw, or the writing exemplar person would conclude they were both written by the same person.
So, I guess the question is, did you write the cadaver note?
No, I didn't write the cadaver note.
Then Durst goes to the bathroom. He doesn't realize his microphone is still on. While alone, pacing and muttering to himself, Durst begins to ramble.
There it is. You're caught. I'm having difficulty with the question. What the hell did I do? Kill them all. Of course.
The line becomes one of the most infamous moments in documentary history, because the day before the final episode of The Jinx, Robert Durst was arrested. He was charged with first-degree murder for the death of Susan Berman. The series that had been building a case for 6 episodes had suddenly become real evidence. In 2021, Durst was convicted of Susan Berman's murder. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Shortly after his sentencing, he was also charged with the murder of Kathy McCormack, the wife who vanished in 1982. Durst died in prison in 2022. Because his appeal was still pending, his conviction for Berman's murder was automatically vacated upon his death. Legally, he died without a final conviction. Mommy Dead and Dearest centers on the murder of Claudine D.D. Blanchard, a 48-year-old woman found dead in her home in Springfield, Missouri. The 2 people responsible were her daughter, Gypsy Blanchard, and Gypsy's boyfriend, Nicholas Godejohn. On the surface, the case looked simple. A daughter and her boyfriend killed her mother. But almost immediately, investigators realized something was wrong with the story. For years, Gypsy had been publicly known as a severely ill young woman. She used a wheelchair, she had a feeding tube, and her head was shaved bald. Dee Dee told everyone that Gypsy suffered from all kinds of health problems including muscular dystrophy, leukemia, and developmental disabilities. Gypsy had been featured in charity events and local news stories as a fragile child fighting a long list of diseases. But when police began investigating the murder, they discovered that Gypsy could walk. Not only that, her medical problems were almost entirely made up. The documentary suggests that Dee Dee's behavior fit a pattern consistent with factitious disorder imposed on another, where a caregiver fabricates or induces illness in someone they control. Dee Dee had convinced doctors and even Gypsy herself that her daughter was gravely ill. Gypsy was in her early 20s at the time of the murder, yet she had spent most of her life being treated as a child. Dee Dee controlled her education, her social life, and even her sense of age. Gypsy later said she was unsure of her real age for 14 years. The murder took place before dawn on June 10, 2015. Dee Dee was stabbed to death in her bed. Gypsy and Godejohn had met online in 2012 and began planning about a year before it happened. After the killing, Gypsy posted a series of explicit messages about the murder on a public Facebook account she shared with her mother. Neighbors saw the posts, couldn't reach Dee Dee by phone, and contacted police. When officers entered the home, they found Dee Dee's body. The house looked largely undisturbed. Gypsy's wheelchairs were still there. Her medical equipment was still inside. At first, people feared Gypsy had been kidnapped. Then, police found her in Wisconsin, alive. News that Gypsy was alive was met with relief in Springfield. But soon, the narrative flipped completely. Local media reported that Gypsy had never been sick. Her entire identity as a disabled child had been constructed by her mother. Investigators began tracing the online relationship between Gypsy and Godejohn. Their conversations showed that the murder was not spontaneous. It had been discussed and planned. Gypsy and Godejohn had exchanged messages about how Dee Dee should die.
Hello, sir. This is Gypsy, and I'm making this video to you, sir. Nick's evil side. I did end up getting a knife, and I hope that it will be adequate. And I got tape and handcuffs, and I hope that will do. Thank you again for doing this for us.
Gypsy mailed Godejohn money she had stolen from her mother, so he could buy a bus ticket. Godejohn traveled from Wisconsin to Springfield. That same day, after Dee Dee fell asleep, Godejohn went to the house. Gypsy let him inside. She gave him duct tape, gloves, and a knife. Gypsy later said she hid in the bathroom and covered her ears so she would not hear her mother screaming. Godejohn stabbed Dee Dee 17 times in the back while she slept. They took more than $4,400 in cash from the house and fled to a motel. They mailed the weapon to Godejohn's home in Wisconsin to avoid being caught with it, then took a bus there. Back in Springfield, neighbors gathered outside the Blanchard home after the disturbing Facebook posts. Dee Dee's car was still in the driveway. The windows were covered with protective film and no one answered the door. Once officers entered, they found her body. A GoFundMe was created for funeral expenses and possibly for Gypsy, whom people still believed was helpless without her wheelchair and medical equipment. One person present that day was a neighbor Gypsy had confided in for years. The neighbor told police about Gypsy's secret online boyfriend and showed them printouts she had saved, including his name. Using that information, investigators traced an IP address to Wisconsin. The next day, law enforcement raided Godejohn's home. Gypsy and Godejohn surrendered. They were extradited back to Missouri and charged with murder. As more details emerged, public sympathy shifted. Dee Dee was no longer seen as just a victim. Gypsy became widely viewed as a long-term victim of her mother's abuse. In 2011, Gypsy attempted to escape at a science fiction convention with a man named Dan, but Dee Dee found them. Dee Dee told Gypsy she had filed paperwork declaring her mentally incompetent, making Gypsy believe police would not believe her. From there, the plan started. In 2016, Gypsy accepted a plea deal. She was sentenced to 10 years in prison for a second-degree murder. Her lawyer said she gained 14 pounds in jail because she was no longer being starved. In 2018, Gadajan was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life without parole. Gypsy was released on parole in late 2023. Evil Genius is a true crime documentary series. At the center of it is a single moment, captured on live television, when a man sat on the pavement, handcuffed, with a bomb locked around his neck. His name was Brian Wells. In 2003, Wells was working as a pizza delivery driver in Erie, Pennsylvania. He had done that job for 10 years at Mamma Mia's Pizzeria. He was 46 years old. Nothing about him suggested he was about to become the face of one of the most disturbing crimes in FBI history. The pizzeria received a call from a payphone at a nearby gas station. The owner couldn't understand the caller and handed the phone to Wells. Wells took an order for 2 pizzas to be delivered to 8631 Peach Street. It was a strange address. It wasn't a house. It was the location of a television transmission tower for WSEE-TV at the end of a dirt road outside town. Wells took the delivery. What exactly happened at the tower has never been fully established, but evidence suggests a struggle took place and that Kenneth Barnes, Marjorie Diehl Armstrong, William Rothstein, and Michael Stockton were all present. Stockton later claimed he was the one who physically placed a bomb around Wells's neck. When Wells realized it was real, Barnes said a gun was fired to force him to cooperate. Witnesses confirmed hearing a gunshot. After the bomb was locked in place, Wells was given a homemade shotgun disguised as a cane. He was told to say that 3 black men had forced the bomb onto him and were holding him hostage. Then he was sent to rob a bank. The device around Wells's neck was a real explosive collar with a timer attached. The bomb was designed to look more complex than it was. There were decoy wires, a toy cell phone, and fake warning stickers. Inside Wells's car, police would later find 9 pages of handwritten instructions addressed to, quote, bomb hostage. The instructions told Wells he had to complete a series of tasks, driving to specific locations to collect keys, each one supposedly giving him more time and eventually defusing the bomb. The pages warned he was under constant surveillance. Any attempt to contact police would result in immediate detonation. Wells walked into a PNC bank. When he reached the counter, he slid a note to the teller. The note said he had a bomb and it would explode in 15 minutes. It demanded $250,000. The teller couldn't access the vault fast enough. She gave him what she could, $8,700. Wells took the bag and left. About 15 minutes later, Wells had completed the first step of the scavenger hunt. He was moving toward the second when police spotted him outside his car. They arrested him and handcuffed him. They sat him on the pavement. Wells told them 3 people had forced the bomb onto him and that he was being controlled. The police did not attempt to disarm the device. They focused on clearing the area and preventing Wells from triggering it. 3 minutes before the bomb squad arrived, the bomb exploded. Brian Wells died in seconds. The entire scene was being filmed live by WJET-TV. The actual moment of detonation wasn't shown due to a technical issue, but the lead-up was broadcast in real time. The scavenger hunt was later tested by police. Even if Wells had done everything perfectly, he would never have had enough time to disarm the bomb. The device was still live after his death. Investigators had to take extreme measures to remove it. The FBI later described the case as one of the most complicated and bizarre crimes in the annals of the FBI. The documentary reveals the people and motive behind everything, except that no one agrees on whether Wells was a willing participant or a hostage. The Family I Had is a documentary about the murder of Ella Bennett. The documentary is centered on the psychological and emotional aftermath of the crime and how it shaped the lives of the people involved. In 2007, in Abilene, Texas, a 13-year-old boy named Paris Bennett murdered his 4-year-old sister, Ella Bennett. The reason he gave was simple. He wanted to hurt his mother, and he knew the best way to do that was to take away one of her children. Their mother, Charity Bennett, had hired a babysitter that night because she had to work late. Paris manipulated the babysitter and convinced her to leave the house early. He was polite and told her everything was fine. She left. Paris walked into Ella's bedroom. He did the unthinkable. After that, he stabbed her 17 times. Paris didn't run. Instead, he called a school friend and talked for about 6 minutes. What they spoke about has never been fully disclosed, but the call was calm. Then, he called 911. On the phone, Paris pretended to be insane. He told the dispatcher that he did this to her because he thought Ella was a demon. The dispatcher instructed him to perform CPR. Paris said he was doing it, but he wasn't. He simply paced around the room, counting out loud with the dispatcher, pretending his hands were on his sister's body.
Hello?
Abilene 911, go ahead.
I actually killed somebody.
You think you killed somebody?
No, I know I did. My sister.
Okay, where's your sister now?
She's in the bed.
Is she bleeding anywhere?
Yes, she's bleeding all over the bed. Because I stabbed her.
Okay, where'd you stab her?
Lots of places. I woke up and I was hallucinating.
You were hallucinating?
Yes, and I thought my sister was a demon and I killed her.
I want you to start CPR, okay? What I want you to do is take her off the bed.
No, I know for a fact that she's dead because I...
Do you want to go ahead and try? It might still help, okay?
No, I don't think it'll help because...
Come on, Paris, work with me. Put your hands on her chest, okay? And I want you to push 30 times. I want you to count.
Okay.
All the way to 30, and then blow 2 breaths in her mouth.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Police arrived and arrested him. Paris was charged with capital murder because Texas law states that the minimum age a juvenile can be tried as an adult is 14. Paris could not be charged as an adult. He was tried in juvenile court and pleaded guilty. He was given the maximum sentence possible for a juvenile convicted of capital murder in Texas, 40 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 20. Paris was evaluated and met criteria consistent with what is often described as sociopathy. Later assessments documented significant psychopathic traits. Paris himself has stated that he has had homicidal thoughts since he was a young child. He was transferred to adult prison at age 19. His first parole eligibility is February 2027. If he is never granted parole, he will be released in February 2047. The documentary shows footage from when Ella and Paris were younger and mainly follows his mother.
Paris, what is your problem?
Mom, what's your least favorite word?
My what?
Your least favorite word? Not black. Or sentence.
I don't know.
Kill Charity's children?
Paris.
Charity Bennett grew up in a family already shaped by violence. Her mother, Kyla Bennett, who is also in the documentary, was charged with conspiring to murder her husband, James Bennett. Kyla was controversially found not guilty. Charity believes her mother was actually guilty. Kyla later joked about manipulating the jury.
She was a good manipulator. But we all are. Paris is. Ella was. I would be lying to you if I said that I wasn't. We all manipulate each other. We're all spoiled rotten. My other daughter, Caitlin, I don't think she's quite as good. She didn't have as good a teacher because I don't do it so much anymore. I don't have a company to manipulate. I don't have drivers to manipulate. I don't have a jury to manipulate. So.
As a child, Charity became addicted to drugs in an attempt to get attention from her mother, but Kyla showed no interest or concern. Shortly before the murder of Ella, Charity had relapsed into drug addiction. For Paris, this was the breaking point. He later admitted that he resented his mother deeply and wanted to punish her for what he saw as emotional abandonment. During court proceedings, psychologists stated that it was unlikely Paris could ever be rehabilitated. Charity, in the aftermath, tried to maintain a relationship with him. She visited him. She spoke to him. She even allowed her new son to talk to Paris on the jail phone.
Phoenix, did you like Star Wars?
I want to do it again.
He says he wants to do it again. I guess that's a yes.
Yes!
Phoenix. Hey, Phoenix. Hey,
He-
Phoenix,
He's listening.
how about this? Hey, I will watch it tomorrow, and tomorrow you can watch it, and then we'll talk about it, okay?
She believed for a long time that loving him as her child might still matter. She has since been told by experts that both she and her new son are at risk once Paris is released. She has said that she will likely need to move to a new location once Paris is free. In 2021, Charity finally cut off all communication with him after learning that Paris was involved with a woman who was on bond 2 hours away from where Charity lived for planning a shooting. In 2019, Paris made international headlines when he gave an interview to Piers Morgan. During the interview, he again showed no visible remorse, and he spoke about his crime in detached terms. At the center of the cove is Rick O'Barry, a former dolphin trainer who once helped create the very industry he now spends his life trying to dismantle. In the 1960s, O'Barry was one of the main people responsible for capturing and training the 5 wild dolphins who played the role of Flipper in the hit television series of the same name. It convinced millions of people that dolphins enjoyed performing for humans, and it helped launch the modern marine park industry, where dolphins became one of the most profitable attractions. But according to O'Barry, what happened behind the scenes destroyed that illusion.
The thing that turned me around was the death of Flipper, of Kathy. And she was really depressed. I could feel it. I could see it. Dolphins and other whales are not automatic air breathers like we are. Every breath they take is a conscious effort. And so they can end their life whenever life becomes too unbearable by not taking the next breath. She swam into my arms and looked me right in the eye and took a breath and didn't take another one. And I just let her go, and she sank straight down on her belly at the bottom of the tank.
From that moment on, O'Barry came to see dolphin captivity as cruel and devastating. One day later, he was arrested off the island of Bimini for attempting to free a captured dolphin. After that, O'Barry left the entertainment industry completely and became a full-time activist, dedicating his life to exposing dolphin captivity and hunting around the world. That path eventually leads him to a small coastal town in Japan named Taiji. In Taiji, local fishermen practice something called dolphin drive hunting. They use boats to herd entire pods of dolphins into a narrow, isolated cove. Once trapped, the dolphins are separated. The most valuable ones are not killed. They are sold alive. Aquariums and marine parks around the world pay enormous amounts of money for certain dolphins, especially female bottlenose dolphins. A single live dolphin can be worth tens of thousands of dollars. This trade generates huge revenue for Taiji and is far more profitable than the meat itself. The rest of the dolphins, the ones not chosen for captivity, are driven deeper into the cove, and that's where they die. The cove is completely hidden from public view. Activists are physically blocked from entering. Fishermen guard the area and local police support them. Government officials assist in keeping the activity out of sight. The dolphins are killed by being stabbed repeatedly with metal rods. The documentary includes several minutes of unedited footage of the dolphin slaughter which were captured on hidden cameras. The Act of Killing is a 2012 documentary. It hands the camera to killers and asks them to show the world exactly what they did. The events at the center of the Act of Killing take place in Indonesia during the mass killings of 1965 to 1966. In that period, alleged communists and people accused of opposing the New Order regime were killed on a massive scale. Estimates range into the hundreds of thousands. The killings were encouraged, and when the violence ended, the people who carried it out were not punished. Many of them remained in power. The film follows one man more closely than any other, Anwar Congo. In the 1960s, Congo was a small-time gangster. He and his friends sold black market movie tickets outside a cinema in Medan. They loved American films, but when American films were restricted during the rise of communism, their income disappeared. That was when they were recruited into a death squad. Congo describes it almost cheerfully. He explains that the government needed people who were willing to kill, and gangsters were useful because they were already used to violence. Congo says he personally killed as many as 1,000 people. At first, they beat people, but there was too much blood, so Congo developed another method. He demonstrates how he killed people using wire, smiling as he explains it. The film shows Congo and his associates reenacting these killings in elaborate scenes. The violence is staged, but the men performing it are not acting. They are replaying their own past. Throughout the film, members of the Pancasila youth appear repeatedly. This group played a major role in the massacres and continues to exist in Indonesia today. In the documentary, its members openly brag on television about killing communists. The film makes it clear that the violence never fully ended. Ethnic Chinese Indonesians who survived the massacres are shown still being extorted by gangsters decades later. Their money is taken openly, and there is no fear of consequences. Later, in a reenactment, Congo is asked to play the role of a victim. He is tied up and forced to beg. Congo begins to shake. He struggles to breathe. He says he feels what his victims must have felt. He is having a genuine panic attack. Toward the end of the film, Congo returns to a rooftop where he once killed people regularly. This was one of his favorite places. He used to dance there afterward, celebrating. Now, he stands quietly. Nothing comes up, but his body reacts as if trying to purge something long buried. The documentary, Tell Me Who I Am, follows identical twins, Alex Lewis and Marcus Lewis, and it begins with a single moment that quietly rewrote an entire life. When Alex was 18 years old, he was involved in a serious motorcycle accident. He suffered a traumatic brain injury and fell into a coma. When he woke up, his memory was completely gone. He didn't remember his childhood. He didn't know his own name. He didn't even recognize his reflection. The only person he recognized was the man sitting next to his hospital bed, his twin brother, Marcus. Marcus became the only proof that his life had existed before the accident, the only person who could tell him who he was. Alex describes the experience as being reborn into the body of an adult. He had to ask basic questions about everything. He had to relearn how to navigate the world and how to be a person. Marcus told him about their childhood. He described a happy life, wealthy parents, and a privileged childhood filled with opportunities and stability. In the first part of the documentary, the tone almost feels gentle. Alex is fascinated by the idea that someone can lose everything they are and still keep going. He trusts Marcus completely, but Marcus is lying about everything that matters. In the second part of the film, Marcus finally admits that the childhood he described to Alex was not real, or at least not the whole story. He reveals that he deliberately left out a dark family secret in order to protect Alex from memories he believed would destroy him. Years pass and their parents die. The brothers return to the large house they inherited to clean it out. As they go through the house, Alex starts finding things. In a secret closet inside their mother's room, he discovers an inappropriate photograph. It shows two young boys. It's Alex and Marcus. Alex knows something terrible happened to them, but he doesn't know what, and Marcus refuses to explain. For over 20 years, Marcus gives no further details. He refuses to talk about it and avoids the subject completely. Alex becomes obsessed with understanding his mother. He researches her life, her relationships, and what he finds is disturbing. He learns that almost everything about her life revolved around sex. In the third part of the documentary, the brothers sit down together to confront the truth. Marcus confirms Alex's worst suspicions. Their mothers assaulted them. But even then, Marcus still refuses to give details in Alex's presence. He says he cannot bring himself to say it out loud while looking at his brother. He says the memories are too painful. Instead, Marcus asks Alex to watch part of his interview with the documentary crew. That interview contains the truth Marcus couldn't say. Marcus reveals that their mother actively trafficked her own sons. He would drop them off at a friend's house and leave them there overnight, then pick them back up in the morning. It continued for years, until Marcus turned 14 and he fought back. After that, it stopped. Alex now knows the truth, but he has no emotional memory of it. He knows what happened intellectually, but his body doesn't remember, which leaves him in a strange psychological state. He is a victim of something he cannot feel. And Marcus is the opposite. He feels everything, but spent most of his life pretending it never happened. The Trials of Gabriel Fernandez tells the story of Gabriel Fernandez, an 8-year-old boy from California, who was killed in 2013 after months of extreme abuse. 3 days after Gabriel was born, his mother Pearl left him at the hospital. He was later placed in the care of his great-uncle and his partner. For the first years of his life, Gabriel lived away from his biological mother. When he was 4 years old, he moved in with his grandparents. Gabriel stayed with his grandparents until September 2012. That is when Pearl returned. She took Gabriel back into her custody along with her boyfriend, Izaro Aguirre. Other family members immediately expressed concern. Pearl had already been accused of neglecting her other children, but no authority stepped in. Over the course of 8 months, Gabriel was systematically tortured by his own mother and her boyfriend. I can't detail everything here, but this case involves prolonged, severe cruelty. According to his brothers and sisters, his mother and her boyfriend Aguirre would often laugh while doing these things. Prosecutors later stated that one of Aguirre's motivations was his belief that the boy was gay. Gabriel's first-grade teacher was the first to report it, but nothing changed. The teacher kept calling. Each time she was told the same thing. A social worker would investigate. They did visit the home, but they only spoke to Pearl. They never interviewed Gabriel, and no medical assessments were ever conducted. No one asked the child what was happening to him. On May 22, 2013, Gabriel was beaten again, reportedly because he did not clean up his toys. This time, he did not get back up. Pearl called 911. When paramedics arrived, they found Gabriel. He was covered in injuries and had a cracked skull, broken ribs, and BB pellets lodged inside him. He was taken to the hospital where doctors determined he was brain dead. 2 days later, he died. Pearl Fernandez was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Aguirre was charged with first-degree murder with special circumstances of torture. He pleaded not guilty. The jury convicted him anyway. He was sentenced to death, but later, Aguirre's execution was suspended indefinitely. Orozco the Embalmer is a Spanish-language Mondo film. It follows Froilan Orozco Duarte, Colombian embalmer working in Bogotá. He lives and works in a place called El Cartucho, one of the most dangerous and impoverished areas in the city. At the time the footage was recorded, El Cartucho was known for one of the highest homicide rates in Colombia. It was common for corpses to just be seen on the street. This is the environment where Orozco lived and worked. The film was shot over a period of several years. The camera simply follows Orozco through his daily routine as he receives corpses, prepares them, and sends them back out into a city that seems to generate more dead people than it can handle. Orozco works in a small, dirty room. The space looks more like an abandoned storage unit than a workplace. The bodies arrive in plastic bags, on stretchers, sometimes carried in by friends or family, and sometimes dropped off by police. Orozco is not portrayed as a hero or a monster. He is simply a man doing a job that no one else wants. He lives among death because that is all his neighborhood produces. The film suggests that in a place like El Cartucho, death becomes so common that it loses its meaning. One of the most unsettling details about the production is that Orozco died during the making of the film. The documentary never explains how he died, only that he passed away before the project was completed. The Act of Seeing with One's Own Eyes is a film from 1971. The title comes from the literal translation of the word autopsy, to see with one's own eyes. And that is exactly what the film forces the viewer to do. See death directly without the emotional distance that most documentaries carefully build in. The film was shot during a visit to a morgue in Pittsburgh. The film documents actual autopsy procedures performed in a morgue. At first, the images are almost abstract, close-ups of skin. It takes a few moments to realize what you're actually looking at. Then, the actual procedures are shown. The film does not cut away. The film has been described as the bluntest statement on the human condition ever filmed.